like I said, I'm a father myself, and I certainly do try to make sure that my kids understand that their choices are very important in life. And, I do feel that homelessness at a certain point is a choice. Some people become addicts. They burn every bridge that they have being an addict, steal from their parents, steal from everybody, and it becomes a choice in a sense. And I think some of my question for you three is, do you feel also that consequences of those choices have to do with homelessness and the choice to do the things that you've done that led up to that?
Do we make choices in life that have consequences? We sure do. And there are forces in our lives that are larger than we are, or that, some of us are able to overcome because we're better resourced, better situated, have better help, and others do not. It's not equal in what people have access to. And I think that that's where it plays out kind of both, yes and no.
Is it a choice? I suppose, on some level you could make that argument. But I know with the addiction component, it starts off really fun. It was a lot of fun drinking and doing drugs, and it was all great for a long time, and then it became not so fun. But at the time, it didn't seem like that was what I was doing. It just seemed like I was just, embarking on an adventure that seemed like a lot of fun. And then by the time the trap was sprung, it was too late.
And I would have to say, me personally, I take responsibility for my past choices, and I understand consequences. Ever since I was a little girl, I knew the difference between right and wrong. Did I understand what addiction was doing to my future in the midst of it? No, I didn't. I did not realize that I was possibly destroying any future that I may have, because in the moment I was partying. Everybody deserves shelter and food. That's a given right. That should be a given right. Shelter and food. Nobody should have to fight for that. Nobody should have to struggle for that, but it happens every day.
Sir Lafrance, you mentioned a quote that stood out was, "Without accountability, there is chaos." And I agree with that 100%. And I'm just curious, on a foundational level, if holding members of the city council accountable for being anarchists, as well as wanting to decommission or dismantle capitalism, there's been 4 different annual symposiums, 2-day symposiums held and organized by the Ink people and Synapsis. And I'm curious if holding them accountable for those views and what those, a 2-day symposium, can we get like a town hall meeting? There's a lot of business owners who may not want to dismantle capitalism. David Cobb, Leslie Castellano, all of these people who have held these symposiums never held a town hall meeting with business owners to see if they want to dismantle capitalism. And these are foundational issues that I feel need to be brought out and discussed before moving forward, and they should be recusing themselves from anything budgetary if they want to dismantle capitalism, which I realize the conflicts of interest are not held because there is no actual code of ethics being followed. So with that, thank you all for being here.
The topic today, I want to step away from the city commerce component. Is that okay? Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And that's something I wanted to ask Officer LaFrance. What is the situation where mandatorily you can do something for these people who are in the street, hurting people, hurting themselves? I thought there was a system for that, but there doesn't seem to be. What can we do when we have a violent, drug-addicted, crazy person on our property?
We're literally putting Band-Aids on the bigger problem. And until there's more things in the system in place to actually hold people accountable long term, that's what we definitely need for those cases that they are unwilling to comply with society, unwilling to accept the help that we continually offer people. There has to be a backside of that with accountability, saying, "Hey, your behavior is unacceptable. Enough's enough. This is the next step for you," with accountability.
One more thing. I don't want to take up a lot of time. One more thing. Reason I bring this up. There's a young lady who was slaughtered here just absolutely slaughtered and tortured by a patient who'd been seen at least once a week at Sempervirens, and the police department had almost daily contact with her. She killed Hannah, went down the street, stabbed somebody else, and she was out in 24 hours. Literally, she was out in 24 hours. She was taken to Sempervirens, they gave her meds, and then put her in the streets. She was not sane. I do not blame her. Her mental illness made her do this stuff. But why couldn't that have been held? Why couldn't she have been held longer? Do we need more Hannahs to get this system squared away?
At the same time, it's also impossible to predict behavior, right? I mean, the only predictor of aggression is past aggression, and much beyond that, it's kind of a crapshoot.
There are things coming up that the county is working on currently. I mean, we have a residential adult outpatient treatment facility that's got a building plan in that's right here in Eureka, and then we have Sorrel Leaf that'll be for kids as well.
2 years ago, I was leaving one of my businesses at 7 o'clock in the morning in downtown Eureka. A man came behind me yelling, "I'm going to kill you, you effing bee." I've been here long enough, I've been in business long enough that I shrug it off. Within seconds, he was on my back, chasing me down the street. I jumped into the 101 to avoid possibly being pushed from behind him. Someone called 911. There was about a 5-minute period where this man was chasing me around the bus stops and what have you. The police came, they saw where he was, they got him. I waited the half an hour while they did what they needed to do. And then when the officer came to me, he said, laughing, and believe me, I have total respect for our police department and the job that they do. And I'm kind of shamed as a community that they have to deal what they have to. But even so, this officer said, "We know this guy. He does this all the time," kind of shrugging it off. And I said to him, "I'm a female. It's 7 o'clock on a Monday morning. My life was just threatened, and I was chased onto the 101 to try to save and protect myself." And so what I want to say with that, and I do have 2 questions, maybe 3, is that, yes, everything that we're doing, that's important, but there are victims on the other side of this. And so we need that understanding as well. The victims on the other side of this also happen to be some of the businesses in Old Town, of which I am one. And I am a couple, actually. And another instance, and this is quick, is I saw and witnessed a very known homeless person in a multi-drug transaction. Somebody pulled up to his encampment, they exchanged some things, that very nice vehicle left, then another vehicle came up, they exchanged some things, that vehicle left, a motorcycle pulled up, they exchanged some things, and then that guy left. And I told this to the police, and what the police said to me was that they're very aware of this gentleman, they're very aware of his activities, but their challenges are finding or catching him, I guess, with more than his acceptable personal use of this illicit drug. One of my questions is, do those of you on the panel think that that's a fair practice? That these people who are suffering from mental illness, drug addiction, one that begets the other very often, do you think that's a really fair practice to those individuals to allow them to continue that cycle without any repercussions? Because I don't know that I agree with.
I know I can say from my own experience that when I was using, interdiction by law enforcement didn't change anything ever. You know, I was not afraid of that. I wasn't worried about it. I know that I faced prison time at times and things like that, and that didn't scare me at all. I wasn't in a state of mind where that interaction made any difference in my addiction or my subsequent behavior. For average users, you know, with addiction, harm reduction, which means community patience, and I recognize that, you know, the idea of working with people until they are ready to stop, they're not going to. And our prisons are full of drugs, so that's also a problem. So putting people in prison doesn't get them away from the behavior necessarily.
There is no number. If you're doing a sales case, it'd be, is it packaged? Is there money? Do they have a scale? There's no number. But Prop 47 dropped possession of methamphetamine to a misdemeanor from a felony. So back when I started as a cop, we had someone on parole or something that was causing a lot of problems, and they had a scraper bag on them. You just get enough on there, you test it, felony, boom. They're going to have a timeout for a little bit. Definitely solve some problems with some very, very problematic people. But again, the laws in California changed. The voters voted for this, and this is one of the unintended consequences, in my opinion.
And I'd just like to add that we tried mass incarceration. It didn't work. It might be satisfying for some people to, the punishment aspect of it, but it doesn't solve the problem, and it's insanely expensive.
The question is, what is the definition of camping? I often am barred from entering my own business because there are people at my doorway, and when I call the police for help, which they are very responsive and very kind, not only to those individuals, but also to myself, I get the question, are they camping? Well, they're on private property. So what is the definition of camping, and are they entitled to that on my personal property? And those are the two questions, and thank you for listening to me, and thank you for all the work that you do.
Question 2 first, what's camping?
Yeah.
If you go onto Google City of Eureka Municipal Code 9302, that'll give you the exact definition of what camping is in the city limits of Eureka. It defines it. I worked on the municipal code with the city attorney a couple years ago with Chief Watson at the time, so it clearly defines it in there. But if people are on your doorstep, and if it's private property, you can fill out a illegal lodging or trespassing letter, blanket letter, and that would be a misdemeanor in Eureka and enforceable.
And if I'm correct, those can be submitted to Eureka Police Department ahead of time from them actually trespassing, so that it can be enforced on a quicker basis.
Correct. Yep. There's actually 2 forms. There's one for individuals. So you have one individual, Bob Smith, is always on your property. You can fill out for him. Or there's a blanket one that's good up to 365 days for an entire year on private property. So we fill out. A lot of them get filled out. So.
And if it's a chronic issue, you can work towards a stay away or restraining as well. Correct.
You can, yeah.
I've worked since I was 12 years old. And I've also worked security, so I hear these homeless people telling me they don't want help, that they don't want to go to homeless shelters because they, have to be sober, and they have to, they don't want to sleep with other men that snore in a home. And I'm angry. I'm a single mother for 30 years, and I had a person that quit paying their rent for 2 years. And I called and I tried to get someone to help me, right? It's over $10,000. Who's going to pay that, right? Who wants to pay that for me, right? It's unfair. It's bullshit, right? I mean... If they want to help themselves, they can.
When we were little kids, we don't grow up, we don't think, oh my God, my plan when I grow up is to be a heroin addict, homeless, having no family, no friends, just totally messed up, working to go to prison. That wasn't my goal, and I'm sure it wasn't many of our dreams growing up. And the thing I want to remind people is that 3 things. All people have value, first of all, and most importantly, all people have value. Secondly, alcoholism, homelessness, they're not moral issues. They're not moral issues. People don't do them because they're bad. People do them because they're hurting. And it's our job to work at being kind. And even a smile can make a huge impact when we're looking at people.